Queen Elizabeth I. We all know the name, right? It just conjures up these images of iconic portraits, those massive ruff collars. But the story of how she became one of England's all-time greatest monarchs, well, that's a masterclass in power, survival, and just trying to steer the ship in a world that was on the brink of total chaos. Okay, let's get into it.
So, picture this. It's 1558, and Elizabeth gets the crown. But England is an absolute mess. It's basically broke, it's completely torn apart by religious fighting, and it's surrounded by enemies who are just waiting to pounce. She wasn't inheriting some stable, glorious empire. It was more like being handed a ticking time bomb.
So that's the real question, isn't it? How on earth did this 25-year-old woman not only hang on to power, but actually thrive? How did she turn this fractured, broken country into a global power over her 45-year reign? Well, the answer is just fascinating, and it's about so much more than just the Queen herself.
See, to really get Elizabeth's genius, you can't just focus on the crown. You've got to zoom way in and understand the world she was actually ruling, the society, what people believed, and what life was like for the everyday person in Elizabethan England.
So first things first, let's take a look at the kingdom Elizabeth inherited. And if you had to sum it up in one word, it would be divided.
On one side, you have her predecessor, her half-sister, Mary I, or Bloody Mary, a devout Catholic. On the other side, you have Elizabeth, a Protestant. And this wasn't just some family squabble. This was the huge conflict that was ripping the entire country in two. Mary's whole reign was infamous for its brutal crackdown on Protestants.
Yeah, the so-called Marian persecution saw hundreds of Protestants burned at the stake. I mean, this created deep, deep wounds and just bitter divisions across the country. So when Elizabeth took the throne, it wasn't just a new monarch, it was a total religious U-turn. And you can bet a lot of her Catholic subjects saw her as completely illegitimate.
Now, moving beyond religion, the society itself was incredibly rigid. I mean, everybody knew their place in the social pecking order, and you did not step out of line.
And the number one rule of this whole system? It was patriarchal. Simple as that. Men held all the authority in the government, in the church, and especially at home. A woman's main job in life was to get married, have kids, and run the house. So the idea of a female ruler, a queen with all the power, that was a radical, even scary idea for a lot of people.
And listen, for the vast majority of people, all this political drama at the royal court might as well have been happening on another planet. A whopping 86% of the population were agricultural peasants. Their lives were run by the seasons and the harvest, not by politics and philosophy.
And this table just lays out that inequality so clearly. If you were an upper-class boy, you might go to university. Your sister, she's learning how to manage a household. And if you were poor, formal education was a total fantasy. It was truly a world of separate and very unequal paths.
Let's dig into this education thing a little deeper, because it was really the main tool used to keep that strict social order locked in place. Get this. It's estimated that only about 15% of Elizabethans could actually read and write. 15. We're talking about a world where literacy wasn't just a skill, it was a kind of superpower, and only a tiny handful of people had it. And that superpower was pretty much reserved for men. As you can see here, the whole purpose of education was totally different. For boys, it was your ticket to public life, to serve in the church or the government. For girls, it was about landing a good husband. The goal wasn't knowledge for its own sake. It was training for the role you were already born to play.
The system was a total patchwork. The super-rich had private tutors, of course. The church paid for some parish schools for the sons of craftsmen. Then you had grammar schools for wealthier boys and dame schools where girls might learn some basic skills like needlecraft. And at the very, very top, just two universities for the whole country, Oxford and Cambridge. And yeah, they were for men only.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got a divided, patriarchal nation where real knowledge and power is in the hands of a tiny group of educated men. Now let's zoom back out and see how Elizabeth actually used that small elite to handle the absolute chaos of her reign, because this is where things get really dramatic.
To survive, Elizabeth had to rely on that tiny, educated group. And nobody, and I mean nobody, was more important to her survival than her spy master.
Meet Sir Francis Walsingham.
You can basically think of him as the original James Bond. He was highly educated, totally ruthless, and he built this incredible intelligence network that stretched all across Europe. His one and only job was to find the plots against the Queen before they happened.
And let me tell you, this guy was busy. Just look at this timeline of Catholic plots, one after another, all with the same goal: assassinate Elizabeth and put her Catholic cousin, Mary Queen of Scots, on the throne. The Ridolfi plot, the Throckmorton plot, the Babington plot, the threat was just constant, and it kept getting more serious until Elizabeth finally had no choice but to execute Mary in 1587.
But executing Mary? Well, that lit the fuse on the ultimate challenge. King Philip of Spain, the most powerful Catholic ruler in Europe, launched a massive naval invasion to take Elizabeth down for good, the Spanish Armada. Her victory against this supposedly invincible fleet, that became the defining, legendary moment of her entire reign.
But here's the wild part. While England is literally fighting for its survival at home, you've got these English sailors, these so-called sea dogs like Sir Francis Drake, who are out there pushing the boundaries of the known world. Between 1577 and 1580, Drake actually became the first Englishman to sail all the way around the globe, mostly by raiding Spanish treasure ships as he went.
And through all this, Elizabeth still had to play the game of international diplomacy, which for a queen usually meant marriage talks. She brilliantly dangled the possibility of marriage for decades without ever saying yes, and she even gave one of her most powerful suitors, the French Duke of Anjou, the funny nickname her frog. She took her gender, which everyone saw as a weakness, and turned it into one of her most powerful weapons.
So, let's bring this all home. What was the real secret to her success? What made her so great?
Her greatness wasn't just about being smart or being charismatic. It was her incredible, uncanny ability to understand and master the very specific challenges of the world she lived in. She balanced the religious crazies, she used a small team of loyal, educated men to guard her throne, and she projected this image of power and stability that just inspired a whole nation.
You know, she succeeded in a world that was deeply divided, with almost no way to communicate with the masses. It kind of makes you wonder, in our own age of instant information and, let's be honest, just as much division, what are the most essential tools a leader really needs to unite a nation today?